Good morning. I don't know why I'm under there. That's very weird. Okay, now I'm in a weird spot. Okay, good morning, everybody. I'm so glad that you've tuned in this morning because we have so much wonderful information to share. And we have so many friends on here with me to share it with you. I just need to slow down and then we'll get it all done. Okay, so make sure if you have questions for anybody, please make sure you use either the live chat on the Rumble page or use the live chat on Facebook. I don't know if you can chat with us on X. I'm not sure. I don't think I've ever seen one show up, but if you want to try, please do. But I know we can on Facebook and Rumble and YouTube. So if you're on any of those, please feel free to chime in and ask questions. You guys know that we always like to take those so we can have a discussion. So without further ado, so we don't waste time today, I just don't know what it's doing. I'm going to go in. We just make this up as we go along, and that's probably part of the reason why you like us. So I'm going to bring on former Representative Sherrie Conley this morning. Good morning, you and your awesome new hair.
Yeah, good morning. How are you?
I am fine. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood.
Is.
And I'm going to bring in Janice Danforth, who is one of the 3 Moms for Liberty that we're going to have on today. And then I'm going to bring on Roberta Lewis, who is another Mom for Liberty. And we will have Dayna Mooney, who is going to be on as well, the other Mom for Liberty. And she's going to come on and join us in just a little bit, but she won't be on with us right away. So all of these ladies have been absolutely instrumental in trying to educate Oklahomans about this one bill that I don't know, former representative, was this the flipping and the 3 votes, and was that an unprecedented situation in your experience as a representative?
No, it's happened before.
Has it really?
Oh yeah. There've been they use it quite a bit. They do. It's not uncommon. That's the reason why it doesn't surprise me that this all happened, because it has happened before. Yeah, okay, if they really have something, my headphones are not connected. If they really have something that they want to get pushed through, they will do those sorts of things in order to get it passed. It's kind of like a public whip, actually. Normally, and I don't know, I don't have any information as to whether or not they whipped the vote or not, but a lot of times they will do a written whip and get everybody's commitment to it before they.
Uh-oh, Sherrie, we lost you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Now I can. Yes.
Okay. They will do a written whip, a formal whip where they will, bring on the paper whip and ask everybody how they're going to vote so that they can determine whether or not they have the votes to bring it to the floor or not. So,
okay. Well, I'm going to share the screen just in case people have not seen what happened, but this was Thursday's vote on this bill. So originally it was heard in the Senate on February 19th in committee. Then it was on the on the floor, and it passed. And notice the votes, guys, 33-13. It's not like this was a slam dunk of a bill from the get-go, right? So then it went over to the House, and then it 7-3 in committee. Then it went to the House floor. Now help me out, ladies, in case I'm missing something. So this was another House vote, the one that I'm on right here.
That was the second committee vote.
Thank you. Okay, so then it went to the floor for the first floor vote, which was on Tuesday, so April
Correct.
29th. And then it was 35 yes, 56 no. Then it went over to the House for another vote, which is normal, right? I mean, you have to switch. We have a bicameral legislature, a House and a Senate, and so they have to be heard in both. So then it went over to the House, and it got, okay, wait a minute. Now I'm even getting confused. So Janice, take over.
Yeah. So on April 29th, which was Tuesday of last week, it failed. Well, then Caldwell captured the vote, so they were able to bring it back for another consideration. On that second measure, Gann asked to table it. That failed. They asked to re-vote that pass. Then they voted. It failed. And then the House Speaker asked for it to be voted on a third time. And it did pass at that point, 51-32.
So the main point is we had no less than, we had a Senate floor vote, we had a House floor vote, and we had another House floor vote. So we had no less than 3-4 votes where it went down.
Right.
Before they bring it back up again, right? And then suddenly it passes, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Oh, here we go. Love all these ladies. Just wanted to throw that in there. All right. So here we've had so many questions about this bill, and we've been told, well, Roberta, you were the one that took pretty much all the notes on the videos. So give us kind of a rundown on what the legislators told us about this bill before I even go into the timeline.
So this bill started. It's important to understand this bill never went through any kind of education committee in the Senate. This bill went through the Economic Development, Workforce, and Tourism Committee, and then the Appropriations Committee, and then it went to the Senate floor. And then it's important to point out that the second fail on this bill in the House, they had more yays. They had more yays than they had nays. But in order for it to be a reconsideration, they had to have the majority of the House in yays. So if it was the first vote, it would have still passed. They flipped several, and then on the bonus vote, it's like they went back and kind of reprimanded the ones that flipped a little, and then they turned around and voted it, and so they were able to get 51 yays, and so that's how it passed on the bonus vote.
Okay, so I was going to let me just show you that this was the original vote.
Right.
Which is why we thanked all of these people for voting no, right? Thumbs down.
Right. Thumbs down.
All right. So then the last vote.
Then the last vote, they get 51 yays, which is the majority. And so they were able to capture that. They were able to then pass the bill on that.
Okay.
And so I imagine so you have only 9 minutes that passed between the first failed vote and it passing.
9 minutes.
Yes.
The second time.
The second time.
Because they had already voted on it on Tuesday. He captured it on Tuesday, and then they brought it back up on, what was that, Thursday?
Correct.
And he didn't capture it, but he asked for a reconsideration on the vote.
And it's important to point out on the first, this bill was not on the agenda. Nobody was tracking that this bill was going to be heard. There was no transparency in this bill. We just got a tip that it was going to be heard, and that's how we knew that it was going to be heard. But their full intention was that nobody knew that this bill was going to be heard on the 1st because nobody would be paying attention.
Okay, I'm downloading the other one. Sorry about
So,
that. So
going back
downloaded. Hold on. I thought I had it downloaded, and then because this is always the way it works, you think you have everything lined out, and then it gets you at the end. Okay, let me throw in the votes so we can see the votes of the people that flipped. So hang on just a second. There it is. Okay, that should do it. All right, there you go.
And those
this was the
votes
final
of
vote.
20. Yeah. And some of those they hadn't voted the first time on the second vote or the first vote. And then this time they voted yes. So we're considering them flipped because they knew what was going on and chose to vote alongside the spineless, which is a nice word to use.
Well, we've had this discussion before, but I think I'm just going to bring it up one more time. The job of the legislator is not to do what everybody else on the floor is doing. It's to protect the rights and liberties of the constituents, correct?
They're representing us.
Right. So I think that was the biggest concern because so many people, there were comments, and Roberta, I'm dying for you to get into this. There were comments that you transcribed, where they were saying, well, we've had people calling us and they just don't know what's going on. Right. Right. Okay. So let's do this. Let me run down the timeline for this whole thing. And I'm not going to read the whole thing, so we're not going to be here all day. But what I do want to show you was I would really like it if you guys would go to the website. So I did put up, so this is the website, wrote2.org. Under this heading, which is the little slide for today, I've put up something called Timeline, How Education Became About Building Students into Cogs in a Planned Economy Instead of Educating Them. And if you're unaware about what this bill is about, it's about creating a planned economy by educating kids for jobs, not educating kids in a well-rounded fashion so they can decide what they want to be when they grow up. It's specifically for collecting data on kids so that they can slot them into the planned economy. And if you don't believe me, I have put all of the links that I used to research this timeline in there. So any place you see something that I've written, there should be a link that you can just go back and push the link and find it for yourself. But I want to start with 1965. So I was 3. But anyway, the very first thing that happened was the federal involvement in education, and that was LBJ's War on Poverty, creating the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. And once they did that, that was it. Then let's go down here. And the overview that I want you to get out of this is uniparty stuff. So that when you think your Republican legislator is voting on some kind of Republican thing, please realize that they're not. And the way you can tell this is a planned economy thing is that it's complete uniparty. It doesn't matter if you're a Republican or a Democrat, everybody falls in line and just perpetuates the same stuff throughout their term, whatever that is. Okay, so President George H.W. Bush created Goals 2000. That was his ESEA. That was when the first state longitudinal database was called for. So that's already back in 1990. Also in 1990, our Oklahoma legislature creates the Office of Accountability, which becomes another thing later on. Okay, that was required by Goals 2000 legislation. So there you go. 1994, Bill Clinton's Improving America's School Act. A computer database, aka labor market information system, would be used into which school personnel would scan information about students and their family, including medical and psychological data that could be shared from school to others deemed important in the student's education. So that was not.
I think it's very important to point out here that it says medical and psychological data. Very important to point that out. 1994. Okay, continue.
No, thank you. 1995, Oklahoma Commission for Teacher Preparation was created in the legislature. It created the nonprofit Oklahoma Workforce Investment Board, which was formed in 1998, and it pulled all of that information there. So, okay, that was still Clinton. So George W. Bush comes in, renames Clinton's ESEA, the No Child Left Behind Act, invented this thing called AYP, needed database to collect test scores at minimum. And this was when the very first state longitudinal database came into play. It was in 2001 in Florida as a pilot project. It's 2002, the state longitudinal grant program authorized under the Educational Technical Assistance Act of 2002. Now realize this is all federal stuff. So when our governor or anybody else in our legislature with an R on their chest stands up and says, we hate the federal government, we don't want the federal government, please know that all they're doing is perpetuating the federal government, and Governor Stitt has been right there doing it along with everybody else. So there you go.
Well, and I'm going to note too that this bill, SB224, the initial grant comes from the federal government. So they have the money already for that. And it's also written in the bill that they will use federal money and they will use private vendor money as well. So anyone from private can put money into this. And then guess what? They get the data.
Can I also point out?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, that's fine. I'm done.
Can I also point out that Jeb Bush was the governor of Florida when the pilot was put in place down there?
Good
2001.
Excellent. And don't forget, Ryan Walters and Governor Stitt have had Jeb Bush in their offices many times talking about things like school choice. So, you know, it's just the way it is. Okay, in 2006, we created the Governor's Council for Workforce and Economic Development. This is a very important one because Representative Brian Hill, is currently a member of the Governor's Council for Workforce and Economic Development, just so that you know. It was codified in law, and I want to make the point. When I first got involved, it was to stop Common Core, right? And they had codified it in law. And we were like, why do you want to codify it in law? And I found out subsequently that the reason why is this. The feds require them to codify this in law because that way they know that the money that they give them is going to be used for the purpose they're telling them to use it for. Right. Okay. If they don't codify it in law, who knows how the money will get used, or we won't get the grant. So to get the grant, to get the federal funds, we have to codify all this stuff in state law. And I first found out about that with Common Core. Okay, so the GCWED was created to support the governor's economic and workforce development vision, such as the initiative Oklahoma Works under Governor Mary Fallin in 2013. So don't forget, this was created as a federal, now think about how bad this really is. It's a federal program that supports the state governor, but the governor basically is told what to do by the Department of Labor through these grants. In 2007, the National Chamber of Commerce Leaders and Laggers Report gave Oklahoma an F in accountability, even though we got an A for our teaching force. In 2009, Barack Obama did not reauthorize No Child Left Behind. Instead, he created this grant process called
Race to the top.
Race to the top. At first, it
Yeah.
was the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. And what ended up happening with that is it included building data systems that measure student growth and success and inform teachers and principals about how they can improve instruction. So they began the RTT and then an early learning challenge to collect data on infants. And if you don't believe that we don't test infants and collect data on them, please see another article that I researched that I put up on the website just this year that shows some of the tests that they do and how the data is collected. So we're collecting even on toddlers and babies. We're testing infants. Make that make sense. And in 2009, Governor Brad Henry took state's fiscal stabilization funds, and that's why we did the statewide P16 education data systems. That's where we established that. Guess what? Republican legislators, this was under Governor Brad Henry and Barack Obama, and our Republicans drafted legislation to create the P20 Council and the Oklahoma Education Quality and Accountability Board. So think on that. 2009, the Educational Accountability Reform Act was created by SB224, which was also produced by Republican legislators and signed by Brad Henry. That was created because of the Chamber of Commerce F's, and that transferred management of student data, including the AYP cut scores and oversights, to the Office of Accountability to centralize data, because you can't have an SLDS if you don't centralize the data. So it's all centralized in OEQBA or whatever that is. 2010, the Workforce Data Quality Initiative, WDQI, granted $1 million. And here's where we get to the root of the matter. The WDQI granted $1 million for the Department of Labor to support the creation of data systems linking workforce and education data to evaluate training and employment outcomes. So that's the bottom line here. And then you can see what it says. I just wrote down some of the things. It complements the United States Department of Education SLDS grants. And that way it enhances the state's ability to link education and the workforce for comprehensive data analysis. So there you go. That happened in 2010. 2012, we applied for an NCLB waiver under Republican Chief for Change, State Superintendent Janet Barisi, and Republican Governor Mary Fallin, the chair of the National Governors Association. We put up a huge stink about that. There's so much stuff about that on our original blog spot. We put up a huge stink about that. They did not get the waiver, but that was supposed to implement the A through F grading system and the data collection. In 2012, we got a statewide longitudinal database grant of $5 million, and it was supposed to go from 2012 to 2017, and it strengthened the OSDE's ability to link students with teachers, programs, interventions, and outcome, and allow the OSDE to link P12 data with education data from other agencies. 2012, we had the OEQA created, and you can read all about this. I don't want to get into it because I just want to give you the overview. In 2013, Governor Mary Fallin announces through her position as the chair for the National Governors Association that she's going to create the America Works Education and Training for Tomorrow's Jobs. That's where the big problem with 224 began. So yes, all the way back with the beginning of the database systems. Yes, this was the beginning of the end. So then we had a Federal Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. States were required by the federal government, the Department of Labor, required to strengthen their workforce systems by aligning them with economic development goals, emphasizing business-led strategies, and improving data-driven decision-making. So you can see where this is going. Mary Fallin creates Oklahoma Works. that linked, or it was supposed to link the WDQI and the SLDS to track the education plus the workforce. And it had 5 goals. One of them was to enhance data-driven decisions by using longitudinal data systems to track outcomes and evaluate program effectiveness. Now, when I researched this, I will tell you, I used Grok. So I would ask Grok questions and then it would spit it out. And then I would compile the data from what it was telling me. So what Grok told me was the SLDS, which integrated K-12 post-secondary and workforce data, gave Oklahoma Works the data to align education programs with employer needs. Is that educating kids for jobs? Yes. I mean, they tell you it is that. Okay, so there was a whole bunch of stuff that happened, but here's the bottom line. Grok told me that in 2014, the WDQI and the SLDS grants were not connected. And that was a problem because they couldn't implement the mission that Mary Fallon had started if they didn't connect them. Do you see where we're maybe going with this? Then it also said, and I want everybody to hear this because if you're watching right now, we have a huge audience this morning. If you're watching right now, I want to encourage you. Grok also told me, it said that the 2014 Common Core data repeal and the NCLB waiver revocation, quote, created policy turbulence, potentially disrupting the ability of the Commission on Workforce Innovation, whatever, and it prevented that alignment with the educational goal. So it stopped the connection of the workforce data to the educational data. Political resistance to federal mandates may have complicated the implementation. So let me encourage you, make a stink, get involved, be resistance, be the resistance, throw the wooden shoe in the machine, be a saboteur, because it works. If you get them to not put these, if we can stop SB224, they can't link this thing together legitimately and continue to get these grants. And that's the bottom line.
Right.
So in 2015, the state reaffirmed the governor's council so they could get more money. In 2021, the National Chamber of Commerce calls on states to adopt the America Works agenda to address the nation's work shortage. And in the 4 goals, it says, remove barriers, to expand the workforce through immigration reform. That's interesting. But under number 2, we're told that every state needs a learning and employer records. And I'm not sure. Yeah, this was bad. In addition to providing a verified and authenticated record of employment history for every American worker, support the ability of education, training, and credentialing providers to produce a digital record of learning that is based on open and available data standards and used to empower learners and workers with information about their skills and qualifications. In 2022, we introduced ICAP, Individual Career and Academic Plan. So many schools have these now. One of the arguments was all of this is de-identified data. Can you explain to me how you can have an individual career and academic plan if you don't know who the data belongs to?
You can't.
2022, Oklahoma Public Resource Center commissions the Office of Educational Quality and Accountability Transformation Proposal, which includes that a data hub, they want a data hub that also helps address another core desired outcome of the stakeholder. What's that word? Does anybody know what stakeholder is? It's a Marxist word. The Marxists use it, the communists use it, because a stakeholder is one of the group, right? So it's all for the group, all for one and one for all, right? This is Marxist. And we called this out when they started doing this in, gosh, when was that? 2008. They started really, really using this language, and it's all Marxist. So anyway, the OEQB wants a data hub, and this is the other important part, right? So we know there's an SLDS. We know there's a workforce data system. We know they need to link that together. They're supposed to do it at the Office of Educational Accountability and whatever that is. That's where the hub is, okay? This is why Governor Stitt will never veto that bill. He creates...
Right.
And here's the long range plan. I won't get into that. And the long range plan, you can look at how all of this fits together. The Oklahoma Works Governor's Council for Workforce and Economic Development. Oh, hang on. Did I miss the part? No, that's it. Okay. 2024. So last year, Oklahoma Works, the Governor's Council for Workforce and Economic Development, votes to accept this plan, which is the workforce, whatever, WIOA state plan. And it includes becoming more data driven, using independent and objective data to drive workforce transformation. Preparing an educated and skilled workforce and meeting employers' skilled workforce needs go hand in hand. Oklahoma will achieve innovation and efficiency through alignment, collaboration, and education, all entities working together to derive collective and meaningful outcomes. So the Governor's Council approves that. Okay, that was done on January 19th, 2024. In 2024, October, I think it was, Governor signs Executive Order 2024, creating a task force on human potential for future industries to go all the way through 2027. This is why Governor Stitt, right here, will never veto this bill. This is his plan that goes along with the workforce agenda for every other Governor Henry, Mary Fallon. It just follows the same plan, right? And in his this thing, it basically says that they need to have a data sharing hub at OMS to integrate education, workforce, and economic data. And they introduced something called DASH, Data Sharing Hub. This data sharing hub is supported by an MOU, a memorandum of understanding among 9 agencies, which according to Grok couldn't even find which are the 9 agencies. So while they're saying that this is all supposed to be transparent and we're supposed to know where this data is going, even Grok couldn't determine who the 9 agencies were that were inside this memorandum of understanding.
Well,
and here's
sure
all the data.
I'm pretty sure the tax commission is going to be on that list. And you know that they didn't list it anywhere because they don't want everyone knowing that the tax commission is going to be following it. I also don't see the Department of Public Safety, which will be following our driver's license. I don't see the well, I guess the Department of Health is where our public records are held, our birth certificates. So that's at least 2, the Department of Public Safety and the tax commission. So there's one other, and maybe if I rack my brain during this, I'll figure out what the other one is.
Well, but I think it's just super important that not even Grok can determine, but this is a memorandum of understanding among 9 different agencies.
Yeah,
to share data when they said they didn't want to share the data.
Yeah,
understanding without understanding, because they don't even tell you who. So yes. Understanding.
Yep.
So this is the last little bit of it. In 2024, at the meeting of the Governor's Council for Workforce and Economic Development, Speaker Chad Warmington from the Oklahoma State Chamber came in. This was in their own minutes. You can look it up. He addressed House Bill 621, which led to the creation of a new workforce commission, with its priority being the recruitment of a CEO to lead the initiatives. A second priority is enhancing workforce data. Warmington stressed the importance of building a strong workforce infrastructure, particularly in preparing K-12 students to be career ready by the time they graduate. So we don't care about their education. We just need to get them into a job, right? I didn't hear him say anything about education in the minutes. He shared Superintendent of Oklahoma City Public Schools' vision that students should be ready to employ, enroll, or enlist after graduation. And he talked about the need for schools to align their programs with the state's workforce requirements. In the 2024 OEQA annual report, it says, our focus has been to establish OEQA as a central hub for data analytics and actionable information, fostering a culture of data-driven decision-making that supports systemic improvements, transparency, and accountability. With the launch of Power BI dashboards and progress toward integrating data across K-12, higher education, and workforce systems in a state longitudinal database system. So notice they say progress toward, right? And this was in 2024. In 2024, in December, OHMS creates DASH, the data sharing.
Oh, she froze.
Yeah.
Uh-oh. Well, I'll just add while she's frozen. We talked about, oh, there you are. Go ahead. You froze.
So sorry. I'm sorry.
I was gonna I'll say something here, but go for
Well,
it.
no, I mean, please do.
Well, I just
Okay.
wanted to add previously we were talking about, and we talked about this as a group yesterday, with the choosing the career that's needed for the state, for the nation, whatever it is. We are deciding what route kids need to go down. We're creating them as robots. We're taking away their individuality. We're taking away what America is great about, is that we were created and founded upon individualism, as far as you do what you want to do. We're not going to tell you what to do, like other countries. I mean, we see look at China. They literally tell them, you're going to do this for a job and you'll like it whether you want to do it or not. Mm-hmm. That's where this is headed. And I don't understand why these legislators are so blind to this, either through corruption, because they have the legislative mafia telling them what to do, or else they're not going to run their bill, which is another thing I believe that happens. And that's very unfortunate that we don't have legislators willing to say, you know what, I don't care if you run my bill, this is wrong, and I'm going to stand up against it. And we need to see more of that.
Well, and
our kids matter.
Yeah. The chamber was the one who started this with the leaders and laggers. I mean, I wouldn't say started it. It started in 1965, but they just keep building on it. And for Republicans to talk about, Democrats, they can't. It's a uniparty. Right. And I think this timeline, if you can't get anything out of this timeline other than we're a uniparty that's only focused on one thing, and that's a planned economy, I'm not sure how to help you see that, because all you have to do is go down through that time. It's all there. I just put it in a timeline.
Well, part of the problem, and, from experience, I completely understand this, that you work with people and you think this is a good person, this is a registered Republican, and they are claim to know what the platform is and be committed to the platform, but unfortunately they get legislation thrown at them, and it comes so fast and so furious that the only thing a lot of times that they can do is listen to the author, who they are assuming have done their homework. And, and one of the things that we see is that leadership, and Chad Caldwell, I completely respect him, with the exception of what is happening with this bill. I mean, it's very frustrating to me, because you hope that people will do their homework and look downstream when they're carrying legislation that is so comprehensive like what this is. But unfortunately, that is not what's happening, and they don't get an opportunity, or they don't take an opportunity. I'm not sure which one it is, and I don't want to be judgmental on this, but they don't take an opportunity to look downstream to see what comes after all of this. And they don't go back like what you have done and look upstream to see where it has originated from and from whom it has originated. And, that creates problems when you start talking to other legislators who are, number one, not skilled in education policy, who are not, versed in education policy, and then who is not plugged into what the agenda that has become so apparent since 2020. I mean, it was prior to 2020. A lot of people knew about, the Agenda 2030, or I guess it was 2021 at that point.
Right.
And, a lot of people just had no clue what was happening. And you can look at this history and this timeline and see when all of this was put into place and when all of these things started coming down the pike. And it was during Clinton's administration. And then, everyone thought that George Bush, if they were not politically savvy, they thought George Bush was a conservative Republican. And obviously, everyone who was not paying a whole lot of attention now have figured out that he was not truly conservative. And then, of course, the rest of it came with Obama's administration. And so we have had the last 12 years for them. I mean, I know it's been 16, but you take 4 out of there for Trump's administration, but even he made some mistakes. I mean, some of the flaws were made during his administration because he was not politically savvy, and he had some of the uniparty surrounding him, not realizing what he was doing. And so really, technically, over the last 16 years, you've had this huge push because of the Democrat control that we've had over our nation. And I know it started way before then under other Democrats, but even as we see, looking at Mary Fallon, that she even was instituting some things that were coming from a Democrat president. And so, if you're not paying attention, you can really make some mistakes, and you can trust the wrong people. And I hate that is what has happened. It happened to me. I mean, I'm not going to deny the fact that I made some fatal flaws in some of the votes that I made. And I'm not trying to take up for these people, but what I'm doing is I'm saying this is where we've been. And this is why it's important for legislators. If you all are listening to me right now, or you come and you listen to this later, House members and Senate members, please, 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 the information is right here in front of your face. And senators, if you voted for this the first time and you're seeing any of this information and you're able to go back now and see where this has come from, please understand that there are receipts here. And you can see that there is nothing good that will come out of this, because I'm just going to throw this out here. I know, ladies, that we talked about this last night. We talked about it over text this morning, but this is nothing but the framework for the ESG. That is what this is the framework for ESG. And the senators who have the power to kill this in the legislature this week need to know that that's what this framework is. And that's why this is so important and why we're doing this show this morning.
And I think it's very important to point out that the state, they changed the name on the bill from the State Longitudinal Database Systems to Oklahoma Education and Workforce Efficiency Data System. And that's what they're using now as the reason why, that was a problem, but now we changed the name and it's not the same thing. It does the exact same thing. That doesn't matter that the name has changed. It is still creating this very thing. And if they are fooled by whoever told them by changing the name means it's not going to be connected and have the same effect, then they have been absolutely fooled. And shame on them, because we have been telling you this is a problem. I don't care if you put lipstick on a pig, it's still a pig. So this is
let me get to the end so that everybody gets it pulled together. And and this was the important thing. According to Grok, Dash supports secure data sharing for Oklahoma Works and the Oklahoma Longitudinal Database System. So what does that mean? So if we have OEQA, which is supposed to be the data hub, and now all of a sudden we have this magic dash right? The data sharing hub. And we're told that it can put this, which is the works database and the educational database together. And we've been told that that's the whole objective. Then what do you think is the objective of this bill? So
Right.
notice that in 2025, the Oklahoma State Chamber, their legislative priorities state support improving K-12 graduation requirements to include career-ready advanced placement and concurrent academic credit options, and advocate for partnerships in the integration of workforce system partners, resources, and strategies supported by state funding that utilize data-driven strategies for skill alignment and credential attainment, ensuring alignment with economic development goals and employer needs. Again, where is the kid in it? Where is the kid's education in it? They never say, I mean, please go through there and look at these links. Please do that for me and read for yourself. Don't just take my word for it. Go back, and that's why I put the links in, so that you can find them and you can read them for yourself. So this is the last piece. In 2025, the George W. Bush Institute, which includes, get this, the Education and Workforce Pipeline website, which measures the state alignment with the Integrated State Longitudinal Data System, says that Oklahoma is not aligned. We only have a 2 out of 4 for coordinated vision, 1 out of 4 for capacity and resources, 2 out of 4 for data-driven policy. What's 224? It's policy.
Data-driven policy.
Right?
Yeah.
3 out of 4 for transparency and reporting. So if you'll go back to the piece on the website, you'll notice that I put all the information about data sharing and all of the information that's in there. Please go back and look at that. And the data isn't secure. Grok says that there are re-identification risks with FERPA and HIPAA. The exemptions allow de-identified data sharing, but indirect identifiers such as zip code or race could enable re-identification, especially in small Oklahoma communities. So please read the rest of this if you need some primary resources to back up what I've said, because I put all of them in here and the data sharing stuff. And I even included our old paper that we did, an analysis of recent education reforms and the resulting impact on student privacy, because I think that will actually help kind of bring those things back. But the bottom line is they created DASH. The OEQE is supposed to be the data sharing hub for everything. Governor Stitt put together that creepy EO. You have to really work to find it too. It's not on the web easily accessible. That creepy EO about how we need to prepare kids for the workforce. And that's what this is about. If you don't want your kid trained for a job like a SEAL, you don't want this bill. Ladies,
Right.
The floor is open.
Thank you, Jenny, for putting all that together in that timeline, because I think that's really helpful for everybody to see, because this is a big beast. So even legislators, and I hope that, like Sherrie said, I hope if they're watching this, that they're really getting that this is a major concern, and the people are speaking loudly against this, and they need to listen to us. The lobbyists have a different agenda than what we have. We get paid, Dayna, Roberta, and I, well, same with all 5 of us. We get paid $0 for what we do. And we do it because we care about what's going on in our state and our country. And the passion is there simply because we care. And they just need to understand that we have good intentions. But can you say the same for those on the other side of the coin on this?
Roberta, you had gone through and transcribed their remarks, their comments on this. Do you want to go through some of those so we can refute them online, basically?
Great idea. Go,
yeah,
Roberta,
so
go.
I think that it's important that I'm going to talk now.
Sorry. Go, Roberta, go.
We'll time you.
Yeah, I think that it's important that we... And we're laughing because I dig so deep into this, and there's so much corruption without even looking at that timeline that Jenny put together. If you just watch this bill from the time that it started till now, till present, there's so much corruption in this bill. And I think that that's what we've all been saying this whole time, is that we elected these people and they went up there and now they're just acting silly at this point, right? That was the nicest.
And silly's nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Silly's
trying to
nice.
be joyful. So one of the things about this bill is we said that both authors of this bill, they keep talking about education. This bill completely bypassed education in the process. And so the first committee that this bill was heard in was Economic Development, Workforce, and Tourism. And at that committee meeting, the Senate author, which is Ali Seyfried, she actually had the director of OEQA there to speak while she was there. And she's not from here. I guess she's not from here. Ali said that she was getting on a plane to go back home. So I'm assuming she's from out of state. But it's almost like she didn't read the room. Like, she's not from here, so she hadn't heard the pushback on the bill. And so she really led us in to a lot of the questions that we all had that nobody will answer for us. And so Ali Seyfried gets up, she presents the bill. Senator Guthrie has a question, and the question is this going to create a new position with the state? And the answer to that is yes, this is going to create a new position. The answer was that the new position for the first year will cost $85,000, and then $350,000 every year thereafter. So I've got my resume. I'm working on my resume.
You don't want that job, Roberta.
Yeah. And then Senator Goodwin says the question that we've asked this morning: how will this bill not steer students into a particular field? And Seyfried answers that. She says that is not the intention of this bill. I don't know how that could possibly happen. That tells you how uneducated she is on what she's being asked to do. She didn't.
Well, Caldwell told Dayna and I the same thing when she and I met with them, because I used so if engineering is needed, what are you going to like make kids kind of push them that way, because that's where a need is, instead of the kid doing what he loves to do, even though he might be good in engineering, he may hate doing that. So and he said, no, they'll get to still choose so they still have that mindset even later on when Dayna and I met with them. So that mindset has continued. Go, Roberta.
Right. Well, and so then Senator Gillespie asked, I just want to make sure we're not collecting more data than we already are. We could potentially streamline all of the reports through this one source. I just want to make sure of that. And Seyfried says, no, we're not going to, we're not tracking additional data. It's not new data. We're looking at trends. And that's when the director of OEQA stands up and she gives this, this long answer to that. But in the end of that, she says, she says, this is an evolving data collection system. So right now, we're just going to collect what we need to get this system started. And then in the future, we will evolve it to collect different data as we have questions that come available to us. So that's what I'm saying. The director, she's not seeing the climate in the room here. And so she's letting us have all of our secrets. And so Senator Kirk asked, will this data be made public? And Seyfried says, I don't know that the public would be interested in that. Maybe later the council can decide. I think the public's interested.
Yeah.
And then the OEQA director, She says access will be strictly controlled. However, there will be opportunity for researchers, policymakers, as well as agencies to be able to
Vendors.
use de-identified information for use cases and studies that are approved. For example, a researcher from OU wants to enter into an agreement with an agency to do specific research. The council can approve the use case. That's your
By the way,
yeah,
they
that's
do
your-
have MOUs already.
Mhm.
Grok found them. Grok found the MOUs for data sharing with all of those agencies. So go ahead.
Right. And then Kirk asked, Senator Kirk, she wants to know what data will be connected to know about the salary career path. And that's when we get into adulthood and we say, okay, we're going to track kids K through 12, but then when our kids get into the workforce, we're still going to track them because OESC, Oklahoma Employment Security Commission, they are the ones who count your quarters of employment. They're the ones, you file your unemployment. They are going to connect their data to this data sharing. So once you turn 18 and you get out of high school, you don't have an opt out. Your information, and frankly, I would like to add also, how is de-identified data from school, from your education, from K through 12, how does your adult employment data know to marry up with de-identified information from K through 12? There has to be some sort of identifier in there to know that Joe Smith from K through 12 is the same Joe Smith that's working over at the Brahms, right? So there has to be some sort of identifying data.
Well, and let's not forget that they have to connect the birth records to the school records and then the school records to the workforce. And, are they doing that with the Social Security number or what?
Student
Well, we don't
ID,
know.
it doesn't matter. It's still
No.
identifiable.
Yeah, it
And
has
then-
to be. Well, it has to be it has to start with the Social Security number because when you register at a school, of course, now we have the wave system, and so maybe that system already generates a number that gets carried over when you transfer in another school district. I don't know, but they're connecting that data somehow already. So anyway, just
right,
a thought.
but once you graduate, how is the data? Say you graduate, you take a year off to go tour Japan or whatever you're going to do, and then you come back and you go to work. So how does OESC know that to connect your payroll data to the same guy over here? Because there's no identifiers, right? How do they know to connect you back to this person?
Hold on one second, because this freaked me out a little bit. So we have a commenter on Rumble today. So we have a lot of people. We have many hundred people watching. She says we're going through the same thing in Kansas. She's going to send me this report they sent to the Education Budget Committee. Yes, please send that to me. She says it's a credential engine. They have your fingerprints from the Chromebooks and tablets. I never really thought about that. But I will tell you this, when Julia and Lynn and I were going to the original state longitudinal database P20 meetings, John Craman, who is the architect of the state longitudinal database in Oklahoma, actually said on numerous occasions that they wanted to try to find a way to get private school and homeschool kids involved in this, number one. Number two, he also said numerous times that the whole overview was to follow kids. I'm not kidding. I'll show you, because she had it transcribed and it's right there. And where he said the whole idea is to follow kids from kindergarten all the way through 20 years old, because he wanted to be able to, quote, find them after they graduate and find where they live and where their parents are to find out where they went. And that's what the architect of the database system in Oklahoma said during one of the P20 council meetings. So if
I
they're
mean,
going to tell you what they're going to do, and we're just going to go, nah, that's not right. That's on us then. They're telling us.
Well, let's say this too. Let's just say why is this even necessary to figure out what's not working in education? And this is what Dayna and I told Caldwell and Seyfried. Our public system isn't working. Everybody can see that. It's not rocket science to figure out. They're not reading. Focus on getting kids to read, and then you're going to see a shift in everything else. We don't need data to figure that out. I mean, and they've been doing data. Look at everything you've been collecting with the timeline. They've been trying to do this for decades, and we still suck.
Well, and let me point out,
joyfully passionate here.
Yes. And let me point out the fact that as an educator, I never saw any of this data. The only data that I ever saw, and Jenny, you can probably attest to this, the only data I ever saw was the test results that we got back after we started testing in the early 90s. And that's what I used to drive instruction in my classroom. And my test results were top notch. I mean, I think I've mentioned this to you all before, that my social studies and my math scores were in the high 90s. Like 98% of my students were passing the math and the social studies tests. And so, every time I talk about education in Oklahoma, I'm like, let's go back and restore it to what it was in the early 90s, before we started allowing the federal government to mess in our business of educating our kids. And then let's see if that fixes the problems that we're having, because you can also go back to that time and look and see when they stopped using phonics instruction to teach reading,
right.
Then that's when the decline in our reading scores started taking place. And it all goes back to when those presidents started deciding that they knew more than education people, and started messing with the education process, and started taking it from the federal level down, instead of allowing local people to do what they knew how to do in the first place.
See, I just threw this one in. The public system is working fine. This is exactly what it was designed to do, to make our children into good little programmed citizens. There's nothing. And that's what I said originally. If you look at the timeline, it's clear. They're creating a planned economy. That was the whole bottom line.
It's not about education. It's not about learning. It's about creating robots.
That's right. Because the only thing, why would Governor Stitt want elementary kids learning about AI?
Yeah.
Elementary kids shouldn't even be near a computer. No. They should be learning something else. And Sherrie, you and I as classroom educators, we've talked about this before. We need to go back to doing what we did millions of years ago, which was you come into the classroom, you get a test. You go through the year, you get a test. You compare how they did on the beginning test and the end test, which is exactly the same. You're just, teaching them a curriculum in between. That tells you more about what that kid's learning than any data you could ever possibly collect on a child. We're not even doing the right thing. None of these people even talk about educating children. It's all about data and jobs. That's all it's about.
Yeah. Well, and I see Dorn Weaver just made a comment about data and using it. And that's not what we're talking about. There is a point of data within the district that they use to figure out how they're doing. That's different. That using their own information by grade, by school, by district, to compare and figure out where they're succeeding and where they're not, that is totally different than this. So I would say that we all agree that you have to, data is part of every business to figure out, are we being successful or not? You have to have something to compare to, but that's aggregated data. That's what we are okay with. It's it's just not the specific individual child to mold them into where they want them to go.
Yes. And I've published the wave. I mean, the data that's in that they can collect, the fields that they can collect data for on the wave, it's 300 and something pages. You don't even need to know what that data is. Tell me how many you really honestly need the ability to collect 300 data points on one kid.
Yeah. It can be pretty
and
simple.
let's go to the idea that this is not something that you can opt out of. And then let's take that one step further, that you've got public school kids who go to school and their parents cannot opt them out of this information. The only way to opt them out is through homeschool and through private schooling. And then what's going to happen one of these days when they make the decision that if there's no data on you, that you don't get to work, that you don't get to go to college, that because you opted out of the system, then that automatically makes you not eligible to participate in the system.
Yeah.
But isn't that what we're doing with Real ID? You just can't fly, right? It's okay because we're protecting you from the bad people, but you can't fly.
Yeah.
We're looking at all of this stuff completely upside down. The government is not here to help us.
No.
We are here to control the government. It is supposed to be protecting our rights, and our children shouldn't be pulled into a matrix. That is not, I mean, that's what we called it earlier. I mean, it is a matrix. So Roberta, because we're already at an hour, and I know, we all have stuff to do. Roberta, what do you think are the biggest arguments that were made that get for this bill that we've just debunked this morning?
Well, I think that, the director of OEQA in this meeting, they've been asked multiple times, will this data leave Oklahoma? And multiple times they have said, no, this data will not leave Oklahoma. Well, there's a provision in this bill that the council will have to apply for federal grants. So the data is going to leave Oklahoma. And then you have the director of OEQA who slipped up when asked, Senator Kirk asked her, after someone graduates, how are we pulling payroll data? And she says the council will determine if that data will be in the scope of this work. She says we have to do that so U.S. policymakers can have the data. That's what she said. And it's been asked several times. It's kind of like what Janice was saying to Doran's comment is that, we get a department having to have data to make improvements. But the problem is that we're not keeping this in the department. We're sharing it with other agencies, other states. We're sharing it with the federal government
and vendors.
And then I would like to point out that we have legislation already in Title 70-3-168, and that's the Student Data Accessibility, Transparency, and Accountability Act of 2013. And this bill says that the State Department of Education shall not share data with the data that they collect shall not be shared with other agencies. So now you're trying to put Senate Bill 224 in Title 70, which is already outdated. There's so much stuff in there. Nobody knows what it is. Nobody reads it. And only for certain circumstances, like a child moves out of state, a child moves in state, you have a child with a military identifier. Those are the only reasons why the data that OSDE collects can be shared outside of that agency. So now you have two bills that contradict themselves, and nobody's going to go back in and fix it. It'll just be another 6 pages to the other already 1,500 pages of Title 70 that nobody understands. And so then you have Chad Caldwell, who, debated this bill on the floor. And I think Representative Gann did an amazing job of explaining where this bill came from. This is an Obama administration bill. He talks about, the Brad Henry era, and he talks about this is a cradle to grave bill. And that's what it is, because once you get the system set up, then what you're doing is essentially you're tracking everybody from the time they enter into the education system until really to the time that they die. Because once you get through the payroll, once you get through OESC and you track people's quarters, then what do people do? They file for Social Security. So then we're going to track people's Social Security. Why, and retirement ages and things like that. And so, I would also like to, there was something else.
Well, hold on one second while you're doing that. I want to point something out. Why do you think, and everybody on here knows that I'm not a voucher proponent, but I want you to think about how are they going to get private school data? Well, if you take government money to put your kid in a private school, that opens up the books. It goes through the tax commission. Now, all of a sudden, you've got some private school kids, whoever's taking this money. And not only that, there are a lot of private schools who accept federal grants. There are federal strings at private schools. If you don't know, if you're at a private school and you don't know, you better ask, because a lot of these private schools take federal money and the strings come in from that. So, and why do you think we had to have policy? Now think on this. Why do you think we had to have policy to test babies in daycare? If we're not doing a cradle to grave deal, why would we even need to test babies? It doesn't even make any sense when you think about it. And when you go read that article where I put in the questions and that kind of stuff, and they show how they test these babies, you're going to be like, that's here in Oklahoma. That's here what we're doing in Oklahoma. I pulled down the data for Oklahoma. So please don't think that this isn't what we're saying it is. It's exactly what we're saying it is. And the way you know it is because all of the other policy that Oklahoma legislators are allowing to happen with testing babies, having vouchers where we can chase back federal and state dollars going into private schools to collect people. Why would you want a homeschool kid to get money from the state government? So that you can track them. So stop.
And let's not forget that we had a legislator who filed a bill to put 3-year-olds in school.
Yes.
Remember?
Correct.
That's not by accident.
No.
So.
No.
And Jenny, you reminded me of what I was going to say about the public school. So when this bill went to the Appropriations Committee over in the Senate, somebody asked Senator Hicks asked why private schools was not included in the data, and Allie Seiferd's response was, "I'm just trying to focus on institutions right now." And so their argument that this is going to help the workforce of Oklahoma, private school kids go out into the workforce. So you're not tracking a huge chunk of data if that is your goal. If your goal is to track the workforce, you're missing out on a huge chunk of data.
So maybe it has a different goal.
Yeah, I have a question about the OEQA director. Did you say that the OEQA director had to leave and get on a plane to go back home? Is that what you said?
I thought that's what so they moved the hearing up so that the OEQA director could get on a plane. And I thought she said go home.
And who is this person? Do you have her name?
It's Roberta something, which is funny.
And OEQA will be part of that.
She was the data director for Mark Zuckerberg for the Meta during the whole 2020 campaign debacle.
But she works for OEQA. I mean, I'm trying to figure out how she works for OEQA,
and she's
not lives out of town.
Well, we seem to have quite a bit of that going on.
Didn't we get an EO from our governor saying that you can't work remotely for an...
Megan Oftedal is executive director, is a results-driven data leader with over a decade of experience in both the public and private sectors. She is excited to serve OEQA and transform it into a P20 data and analytics hub to inform policy and educational outcomes. And there you have it. Hold
Yeah.
on. She previously built and led data science teams at both Meta, like you said, and American Fidelity, where she spearheaded several impactful enterprise-wide data initiatives. She also has an extensive background in educational policy and research, including a tenure at the RAND Corporation.
Oh,
Who
don't
is
they
the
write
RAND
books?
Corporation?
Don't they publish books? Textbooks?
Right. You know who the RAND Corporation is. There are some of our overlords. Our overlords live at the RAND Corporation. That's where our elitist planned economy people sit, is at the RAND Corporation, where her work focused on aligning educational funding with quality outcomes and fostering innovation in K-12 education. She earned her undergraduate degree in economics from Loyola, Chicago, and holds a PhD in policy analysis from the Rand Pardee Graduate School, and completed a postdoctoral fellowship at Harvard University's Center for Educational Policy. I give you OEQA leadership, Megan Oftedal.
Oh, sounds like she really aligns with Oklahoma conservative values.
Well, but here's the deal, guys. We just proved the whole bottom line.
Yeah.
And I hadn't even looked that up when I did this. When I did the information, I didn't even look to see.
And OEQA is on that 9-member council for the Senate Bill 224. So keep that in mind, everybody. They're on that.
Actually,
So
the
they'll drive the
OEQA,
decisions.
the OEQA is who would hire they would house the employee that this bill would pay for.
Right.
And so the 9 members on that council are the director of Oklahoma Workforce Commission, counselor of higher education, Oklahoma Department of Career and Technology, superintendent of public education, Oklahoma Employment Security Commission, educational quality and accountability, Russo, one data privacy and security expert, health insurance portability, and one data privacy and security expert who is familiar with FERPA, one member of the public with expertise in workforce or education who's appointed by the governor.
Yeah, and that needs to be appointed by the governor. So
yeah,
and we all know
how well that's going.
Exactly.
Right.
And what happens when we have a Democrat governor? Now we've got them controlling this. So
yeah, and then it has the option to add additional state agencies.
Right.
With that option. And then I would like to point out that this bill comes with a $500,000 or $5 million price tag after every year. But here's the kicker. Let's talk about this. This bill went through the Senate Appropriations Committee, and I watched that committee, and there was nothing in that. Nobody in that committee talked about the financials of this bill. And when Chad Caldwell took the floor on the 29th, on April the 29th, Dick Lowe, the voice, it's scary when the voice of reason is Dick Lowe, but he got up and he said, what is the financial impact of this bill? And Chad Caldwell said, well, it's not going to be fine. It's not going to impact us until 2027. And that's how we
need to worry about it till then.
We'll worry about it then. And we have a long time to go between now and 2027. So what you're doing is you're passing a bill with a fiscal footprint that we're going to have to pay for in 2027. Well, a lot can happen between now and 2027.
Yes.
Well, I think the bottom line is this, and we'll do a few more minutes, and then I think we need to probably cut it off at 1:30. But I think the bottom line is this. Anybody who votes for this bill, knowing what we've just said, needs to be primary. They need to go bye-bye. Because if we're not going to have state leadership that's going to push back against federal government implementation of garbage to create a planned economy to put all of our kids into a little machine where they can be a widget, needs to go away. And I'm sorry, but that's just the absolute fact. You're not protecting our freedoms or the liberties of our children if you're going to continue instituting this garbage that's creating a planned economy where our kids just can't be what they want to be. They have to be whatever the machine tells them to be, whatever the workforce needs at the time. No.
And I think we need to point out too the logistics of what happened with the voting. And I so appreciate Representative Gann for being such a voice on this. And he even made a statement about what they did with the third vote and that it went against House rules. And I think because of that, the House members need to get together and reject that third vote and make it go back to a failed vote. I just don't understand how this can move on to the Senate when they didn't even follow their own rules. And how do we take any of them seriously moving forward? And now it's compromised. Now we're going to just keep voting over and over and over again until they get the vote they want. This is just unacceptable, period.
Well, and it's important to point out that Caldwell is not the one who asked for the bonus vote. So that should tell you that Caldwell is not the only one pushing this bill. It was the speaker who asked for the bonus vote.
Right. And he needs to be kicked out of that position, period. And I hope
because what organization is pushing this bill?
The chamber.
The Chamber of Commerce is. Mm-hmm. How many lobbyists for the Chamber of Commerce do we have at the Oklahoma legislature?
Well, what we do know is on February 11th, the majority of the people that voted for this bill went to a fundraiser for the Oklahoma Chamber. They paid $350 a plate to be at a fundraiser for the chamber. Yeah. And these are the same people that are pushing for this bill.
And I want to point out, the Chamber of Commerce has always been for a planned economy. That's the way that who was for Common Core? Oh my gosh, who did we fight against for Common Core? The National Chamber and the Oklahoma State Chamber and the Oklahoma City Chamber of Commerce. Those were the ones that were continuously, that and the state educational leadership, the OSSBA and COSA. So all the state superintendents were for this. All of the state school boards association was for Common Core. So these are the people who are not our friends. They want common things that put kids in a database to make things easier for a planned economy. Please pay attention to who's asking for these bills.
We always say follow the money. There's always a reason for that. And when people finally look enough and realize after all the layers of crap that they want you to see through, because that's exactly what this is, and you see who these funders are, starting at the U.S. Chamber, where do you think that money goes? It goes to your state chambers, even maybe some of your local chambers. So that's definitely something for people to be more mindful of, is the funding of these things. And when you see that, you begin to see a bigger picture. Unfortunately, my House representative, possibly my senator, they've all, been bought and sold by the chamber. So when you go look at your campaign finances for your representative, your senator, you begin to see a very clear picture of why they vote for what they do, why they lie the way they do. I mean, they're not up there representing us, the people that voted them into office. And people have to remember that. We're coming up on a 2026 election. Check their voting records. There's things starting to come out about voting records, and I'm sure there's more to come. If your legislator voted for this bill, even if you just base it off of this one bill, but there's many more examples other than this bill of how they sold you out, your child out, all the above. So if it's something that, people are considering, find someone to run for office. Find someone. If they have questions, you're welcome to reach out to any of us on this panel. We are happy to help you figure that out, answer any questions of what that might look like, any resources that might be helpful to you, because this should be at the straw that broke the camel's back for us. I mean, after Janice and I went and met with them, and we asked them about the root cause of this, why are we not addressing that instead of this?
Right.
And they basically blew us off. Mm-hmm. When we asked, like it wasn't even a big deal. So, yeah. But it is a very big deal.
Well, and I think too, we need to point out that, some bills it's constituent versus constituent. So there's two opinions. They're hearing from two sides, and it can be hard for them to decide, okay, half my constituency but wants me to vote this way and the other way. And so that's a fair battle within themselves. There is not a constituent fighting for this bill at all. There's only people fighting against it. Nobody's going, yes, please give my data to all these government agencies. I can't wait. There's not. So it's the people versus the lobbyists. This is the people versus the chamber. This is the people versus the governor. And it's time for them to stand up and support what the people are telling them that we want. Period.
Yep. So I want to put this in. My rep voted no after getting much of this information. He didn't see the danger when reading the bill, but he did read and listen to the information given to him and voted no. Others
Nice.
ignored the information. I think what Stephanie is saying is so important. Call your representatives and your senators, particularly your senator right now, and tell them no. And I will say this, my representative is John George. I argued and argued and argued with him about this bill. And I was told by Representative John George that he was going to get his information from the floor debate. So I'd like to know, can anybody tell me what the problem with that is? I tried to educate him about what his role was, but I don't think he understood. Does anybody know what the role of a representative is?
He didn't get the memo.
Maybe listening to you? Maybe
What?
listening to what his constituent was saying?
The problem
perhaps?
with the floor debate is you have a House representative who is a co-author on this bill, and you have a Senate author on this bill, and they are contradicting each other. If you go back to the Senate hearings and you go back to the House hearings and you go back to that floor debate and you go back to the floor discussion, Caldwell says, no, we're not going to share. And Seifert says, well, yeah, we're going to share if they ask. So which is it? And I would like to point out that the House member from Mustang, who is sick, he's sick and tired.
Oh, hold on.
We're all sick and tired.
We're tired of fighting Republicans.
We're sick and tired, and we don't get paid
Madam
for it.
Speaker,
So we're
I'm
sick and tired and broke.
I am so sick and tired.
Oh, he's so dramatic.
Hold on. Let's do it one more time.
Madam Speaker, I'm tired. I am so sick and tired.
Well, he's sick and tired of having to run and scrape for the governor, because don't forget, he's on the Governor's Council on Workforce and Economic Development, who I pulled the agenda from, who had the meeting with Chad Warmington from the Chamber of Commerce, who told them that this is what they needed to get done. So he's just being a representative of the chamber, as he's been asked to do by the governor and the chamber. So you have to give him that. I would imagine I would be tired trying to carry their water as well. That's pretty heavy water.
I'd like
And
to point
he's
out
not
one other
representing
thing.
the people. Go ahead.
I'd like to point out one other thing before we cut this off. And I want to speak directly to educators, families of educators, people who know people who are in the classroom. And I want them to understand, make no mistake that the data that they are collecting and want to collect and keep on our children has nothing to do with improving outcomes. This is not about correcting behavior. This is not about ensuring that when they graduate as a 12th grader, that they read and understand, comprehend on a 12th grade or a higher level. That is not what this data collection is about. This data collection is about using it to drive the economy. And that sounds really good, on the surface, but that is not what this is about. This is not about improving education. And that's what they're trying to do, is sell that it is going to help education. It is not. Educating children is what will improve the economy. Bottom line.
And it's important to point out, Sherrie, that SDE does not support this bill. This bill, contrary to Representative Caldwell's statement on the floor on the 29th, SDE does not support this bill.
Well, we haven't heard anything from Ryan Walters about
Nothing.
that publicly.
No.
have
We've
we?
heard nothing either way. Actually, Ryan has not come out for or against it, and so the idea that they're saying that he's for it when he hasn't said anything like that publicly is a misrepresentation, I believe, of the truth.
Right.
All right, ladies, we're going to go ahead and jump off of here since it's 1:30, but we had hundreds of actually people watching today. And I'm hoping some of those hundreds were actually people who are sitting in chairs and just had minutes to listen to us on X, where most of our people are listening. And I really hope that you did. And I hope you got something out of this. And for those of you who are watching, this will stay on our YouTube and our Rumble channels, and you can share it from Facebook for 30 days. And I'll have some clips that I'll cut out of it here when we're finished that you can share as well. But please call your senators immediately and let them know about this and share this information with other people. This is so very important. And remember what I said when I was researching this through Grok. It said that part of the reason why they're having to do this now is because those of us who were involved in the Common Core movement and who tried to push back against the SLDS and the Common Core in the Obama years under Mary Fallon and Janet Breese actually screwed it up for them. And we made it harder for them to do that. Be a cog. Don't be a cog. Be a clog that you throw into the machine. Be a saboteur. Isn't that what they said? It's some sabotage comes from the word sabot, because the Dutch would throw their shoes, their wooden shoes called sabot, into the machinery to make it stop because they were being used against their will, essentially. So be a saboteur.
Throw your wooden shoe.
Throw your wooden shoe.
Throw your wooden shoe.
All right, ladies. Lisa says, thank you so much. And Julia says free market, which is amen. We need to understand that. I really appreciate you guys so much. I'm so glad that you are involved, and I just love each and every one of you for what you do. Thank you so very much. And I just feel privileged to be in this with you and be your friend. So God bless you. And God bless everybody watching. Thank you so much for the time and energy you devoted to this at 9 a.m. on a Monday morning. We just love you for that. So take care, and we'll see you again on Wednesday morning at 9 a.m. Thanks so much.
Senator.
Bye.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.